Hello,
So-
can you hear me?
yes, you sounded so mysterious.
Oh, yeah.
Hello. So, Sid, today on the podcast, we have an amazing guest. His name is Jacob Lemanski, and he is the owner and founder of a psychedelic ant space in Denver, Colorado.
Nice. Looking forward to talk to him.
Hello.
Hi!
How are you?
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, looking forward to talk to you. I just read about you and I'm so impressed with your life achievements. And no, seriously,
Sid
like
loves
the
this.
things you have done, I am already a really big fan and looking forward to talk to you a lot.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So, to start with, let's talk about your 999-day bike ride. Why? What started this?
Well, I was trying to go as far as I could,
Wow.
and I never expected it to take that long.
What was the journey like? What was the starting point and what was the end point? Or you did not even had the end point or you were just going? What was the thought behind that trip?
When I was 20, I rode my bike across the United States, and then later, 27, 28, I had this idea that I would try to bicycle around the world. And so crossing Europe and Asia would complete my lap across the land. And I had this thought that only getting to a place where I could go no further would I know that I'd gone as far as I could. I wanted to go until I quit. And I thought I'll bike around the world. Surely it'll be so hard that I'll stop along the way. And then I did it. I biked from Portugal all the way to China, staying north across Russia, down through Mongolia. And I came back to Boulder, Colorado, and I realized I wasn't trying to succeed in biking around the world. I was trying to go until I quit. And I left, and that first lap was 260 days. I left for another 740 days until I figured it out in the middle of Africa. I went as far as I could.
Wow, that's amazing.
So once I left the second time, the route I started in Alaska, went to the very southern tip of South America, and then across New Zealand and Australia, and then 100 days north across Africa.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's like one of the very few people who have done an adventure like that, and I really respect that. It's really, you need all the appreciation in the world for that. How was your
Yeah,
journey
thank you.
when you were riding in Mongolia? Because there are big mountains over there and a lot of wildlife.
Mongolia was one of the most far out places I ever was the whole trip. And I was about 6 months into the journey at that point, and honestly, still not nearly as experienced as I was by the end. And that was basically, I bicycled into a desert, and it kept getting drier, and I kept running out of water. And I'd get to the next town, I'd bring more water with me, and I'd run out again. And at the next town, I'd get more. And eventually, I was leaving town with 50 pounds of water just to cover 3 days of biking. And I actually bicycled up to the border of China, ready to get out of Mongolia, and I couldn't cross there as I wasn't a Chinese or Mongolian citizen. I had to go to the next one, and they pointed out into the Gobi Desert and said, "It's 400 miles that way."
Okay, yeah, that's scary.
It was scary. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And you did that all solo, Jacob. That's the wildest part.
Well, who would go with me? That's what I always say.
Not me.
So honestly, I started with a girlfriend.
Yeah.
She biked with me for the first 2 months,
Yeah.
and she's actually married to somebody else by the end of the trip. That's how long it was.
There's got to be a certain like meditative aspect of doing that solo though, right? Like it's just you, the bike, and the action of cycling.
Yeah, I mean, I was even years in country, I didn't speak the language. So it was, I interacted with people every day, but there wasn't even conversation to be had. So yeah, it was totally isolating. But across the 1,000 days of that, I became exactly myself. I had no
Mhm.
mirrors to tell me I was doing something wrong. And without that, I could just be me, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think this is the biggest journey everyone should take to find your own self.
Mm.
Because most of the people out there, they don't even know who they are. They are just following the standards set by others. But for them, it's really hard. So I'm glad that you had a lot of time to think about it, and then you, after your trip, you were a better man or a different man after that.
Yeah, it changed me for sure. I became very patient.
Yeah, I can imagine riding a bike in the desert alone without water. So yeah, you can be, that will make you a patient person. I also read about your psychedelic work. I am also very much into psychedelics, so I want to know more about your experience into that side of your life.
Yeah, so um, I first tried psychedelics after my bike ride. I had, while I was out there 1,000 days, the only thing I missed was this ant farm that I had made and left behind. It was two pieces of plastic with a light bulb set behind it. I missed it like a pet. And when I got home, I got that ant farm started again, and I was out in the garage looking at it one night and feeling inspired about my bike ride. And my roommate came out and gave me the first hit of LSD I ever tried. And printed on the blotter paper was an ant.
It's wild.
It was an antacid. Someone was making a joke. But tripping that night, I conceived to build the world's most beautiful ant farm. And that was my start of psychedelics. I used it to integrate the experience and
I
create
love
art
that
with it.
story, Jacob. That's yeah, it couldn't be more pivotal. The fact that there happens to be an ant on the LSD tab.
Right.
You can't make that up.
And I've gone on to create a whole ant farm gallery.
Yes,
And that's what I'm doing now.
I love that. Can we talk more about so the images you use in conjunction with the ant farms? They're from the Hubble telescope, right?
Yeah, I use Hubble images.
Yeah.
The idea is that, what do you put behind ants that are
Mm.
digging? And um, partly I wanted really high quality, high resolution images, and NASA images are free for public
Mm.
use.
Right.
So
Mhm.
I started searching, and the thing about space images, mostly they're just black. There's
Mhm.
some white stars out there, and so I found the most colorful NASA image that I possibly could, and that's the one that ended up behind the ants. Ants in space.
I love that because it's sort of like a reflection of humanity and how small we are as well, right? Like it's sort of it resonates with the human condition. We are just small ants in space, really.
Right. The background image that I actually use is 50 light years across, and
Wow.
it's a scale that's hard to comprehend.
And in the grand scheme, 50 light years is still nothing. How big universe is.
Right.
Yeah. The idea of putting these images behind your artwork, what initiated that idea? Like, was it a thought after your psychedelic experience, or is it something you saw on your journey, on your trips, that inspired you, or it was just like you were actively thinking about it and then you decided that this is the best way to go?
You know the so the ant farms they're framed in like a picture frame, and then the background is illuminated. And so the very first background I used was just a blue matting. I got it from the Michaels picture store,
Mhm.
and I had these color changing lights in there because I wanted the lights to illuminate the background and shine out through the tunnels. And as I was out looking at it one night, getting stoned, actually, I had a lighter in my hand and I was watching the lighter change color in the light. And that led me to start experimenting. And I started doing crayon drawings and sticking stuff back there to change colors. And it was basically a long search for what fit and what felt right and what was colorful enough to be interesting.
Yeah, what you've created is very unique.
I love your work, and especially you didn't just stick to the digital world.
Mm.
You also created your own gallery and displaying it for everyone, which is always a
Mm.
next step, and very appreciated of that too. That you are trying to bring people of both world, digital world or physical world, come together and enjoy your art.
Well, with the ant farms and my bike ride, which is what I was integrating with them, is it's art that takes you got to be patient with it. The ants are going to be in there digging for a year, and just like a bike ride around the world, you can't rush it. You just got to be patient, and then it changes at every moment. So the art piece itself only exists in the present. And on my bike ride, I learned very well to just be in the present. The idea of when I was out there, I became exactly myself. That was the place where I was making that art out of. I it's not like anything else you've seen because I wasn't looking at anyone else's stuff. I had been isolated for years, and so it kind of came for like a very honest place within myself.
Yeah, I love that, taking yourself out of the norm, and you get something that's absolutely just you. It's just unquestionably who you are, and then you've managed to create something physical that other people can enjoy. And you created the space specifically for people to trip in, right? That was kind of the concept behind it.
Well, when I first built the ant farms, I was living in a basement. And so I started hanging them in my basement, and I had this finished basement full of my illuminated digging ants. And it really was the most beautiful place to take psychedelics. But it was strange to bring people down in there, out in my suburban house. Maybe like someone would knock someone would knock on the door trying to sell me roofing or something, and I would be like, "Let me show you my." I'd bring them down into my trip space, and
it does have a slightly like serial killer vibe. Join me.
Not slightly. I think it's a lot of serial killer.
Honestly, I'd like to go down first, and I would turn around and watch their faces when they walked into my illuminated ant farm room. And cool. I don't know, it was a joy for me. And but it was the wrong way to display them. So I need, and also the internet didn't work either, because you got to get close to see the ants, you got to step back to see the tunnels, and then it changes for a year. So I really wanted to get them out in front of people, and yeah, the space I created in the basement is what I was trying to create above ground in my warehouse, and it's absolutely a trip space. That was my idea for it.
There's like live events being hosted there at the moment, lots of music, people can rent the space. You also have your own merch, you're designing clothing as well now, and people can actually purchase the ant farms as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, a lot of people come in, they think it's just an installation, but everything's for sale. Honestly, I want thousands of those ant farms to be on walls around the world.
So cool.
I want them to be the new fish tank. And
yeah, I love that. I was just thinking that. Yeah, and screw tropical fish. This is cool. This is way more sustainable.
And and the maintenance is you just put in little sugar once a month.
Yeah.
It's good for tripping adults, but also kids like them. So I got a lot of things covered.
And you don't have to clean them, because with aquarium you have to clean it a lot. Otherwise it will start smelling and stuff. I don't think you have to clean the ant farm.
You put ants in there, and they'll live between 6 months and 14 months is my record. And they're slowly changing the landscape in there, and they're slowly dying off. And actually, it eventually kind of turns into a retirement home, and they're just maybe 2 or 3 ants. And interesting that there'll be 50 or 100 feet of tunnels in there, and you'll see the ants right next to each other. They like to be together. And eventually you just have one ant left, and that's the only time you can distinguish any of them. And when that ant dies, you feel a little bit, right? And it's not like losing a dog or something like that, but it gets people to care about a single ant. And I like that part about it too. And then the whole thing, you clean it and refill it and add more ants. It takes about an hour to restart it.
The life cycle starts again.
Blank slate, see what they make next time.
Cool.
Well, with this, when you were explaining that, I am just hoping that's not how our universe is, and God is someone who have our universe in his wall, and aren't right after maybe 30 billion years, he will just wipe it out and start a new universe.
You know what? Interestingly, what you're creating is you're adding soil, and then it's got the background of space, and then you add
Mhm.
life to it. And you're like, you're creating a little universe in there, and there's living beings that now you're looking in on, and they exist in 2 dimensions, and you're in a higher dimension. You can see through their walls, and you feed them and you care for them, but you can't access them. They're like in this thin habitat. You can't reach in there to do anything. And sometimes they get like stuck in a cave, and maybe it takes them days to dig themselves out, or maybe they just die in that little cave, and you can't really do anything. And I feel like that speaks to the
Mm.
challenge of some God running this universe, and why do bad things happen. And it's like, it's hard to get in there and fix it.
Even if it's not hard, because sometimes we just want to observe, right? Because even if you have the art farm and you see something is struggling, if you want, you could dig in and help that ant. But I think as a someone who is watching it, want to see ant fixing its own problems. So maybe that's how the God is looking at us, like he want us to figure out our own problems.
Totally, that's great. But sometimes I just try to give them a little water, and I end up drowning an ant. So there's like there's that too.
We can only do our best.
We can only do
Maybe
our
that's how
best.
the great flood happened.
um,
That's an interesting concept because, and we always assume that the higher being is without fault, like they are all knowing and all controlling. But what if it's just a slightly more evolved version of us?
right.
Hoping
Just
not
doing
to
our
fuck
best.
up. Just doing what we can. Oh, I love that. So, you obviously living in Colorado at the moment, decriminalize psychedelics. So, your spaces like Meow Wolf, the International Church of Cannabis, they're very unique spaces. Where do you see the future of that going in Colorado?
It's tough to tell. It has been legalized, but I'm
Mhm.
sure there will be pushback on how, like, where you can take it and how, and that sort of thing. Just give it a couple years. That's what happened to cannabis too.
Yeah.
I think we're in the Wild West right at the moment.
Mhm.
Um, but just from my experience of people coming through the space, there's a lot of mushrooms out there. There's a lot of companies creating mushroom chocolates,
Mhm.
creating mushroom gummies. Technically, they're not allowed to sell anything.
Sure.
But the industry's growing, and even very interesting things are happening with testing.
Mhm.
Just like how much THC is in cannabis, you're
Mhm.
now getting charts about what's in the mushrooms being
Mhm.
grown, and also they're cultivating new strains, same as cannabis. The
Mhm.
cannabis industry is just stepping right into mushrooms, bringing all their knowledge of plants and
Mhm.
that right along with them.
I want to know about your first trip or your most favorite trip you had, either on LSD or on mushroom or whatever. What was that trip was like?
My favorite trip, tripping with ants is always super fun. I definitely recommend getting some insects around if you're ever tripping on LSD. But you know, what comes to mind is there's an art piece I made. Um, it took like 2 years. I realized not everyone wants ants in their house, and I took my illuminated frame concept, and I got rid of the space background in the ants, and I started making my own backgrounds. But the first image I used was the same NASA image, the same Hubble image, and I ended up mirroring it and creating. I call it the celestial being. What pops out of this Hubble image is it's I consider it my self portrait. It's just a character with eyes and a mouth, and it's just a beautiful piece. And right when I was finishing it was 1,000 days after my 1,000-day bike ride.
Wow.
And I built that art piece, and I built a chair to sit and look at it. And I realized after going for so long, I'd come home and made a spot that I was compelled to stay. And to this day, whenever I feel like going for a third lap, I'll stop and I'll go sit with that art piece and
Mhm.
feel like it's pretty enough here. So I created this art piece, and it felt like my self portrait. And it is a really beautiful piece. And I smoked DMT with it.
Mhm.
And I entered a bliss state, and it was so powerful that I didn't touch DMT for 2 or 3 years afterwards. But during the moment, the joy was just overwhelming. It felt like I was being led into heaven. Like, how happy would I be for that? And I'm not religious, but that was just kind of like the emotional level that it took me to. So, yeah, tripping with my self-portrait.
Do you listen to any music when you're tripping, or what type of music?
Yeah, my tripping's always eyes open experiences with music, because I'm with my art, and mostly I trip just to celebrate my art. Um, and the music, yeah, I just do EDM. I think it's pretty typical in the scene, but or Bonobo is great. Max Cooper I listen to. Artists like that. I like music where there's no distinguishable instruments. It's all just
Mix.
noises that they somehow make.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, there is a thing about these noises, because with every beat I notice, if you're having a really good trip, you see different type of visions. With the beats, it started to change, and then I feel like I'm having even a better trip, because like music somehow just change my direction of my trip somehow. So that's my personal effect I have.
I love bringing music into trips.
Yeah.
I never trip without it, honestly.
Jacob, thank you. I think we've gotten so much good content from you. We can probably wrap it up there.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Jacob. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.